Last minute sure takes a long time. And we were waiting for Josh.
Right on time.
On my schedule. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we'll call this meeting to order, the Denison City Council for Tuesday, January the 21st, 2025. The time is 6 o'clock, and if you would please join me and join Pastor Gene Emerson, pastor of the New Beginning Fellowship. He'll offer our invocation. If you'd please stand, please.
Let's pray together. Heavenly Father, we thank you. We ask your presence here. We ask that you would come and grace this meeting tonight. We pray, Father, that your blessing will be upon this city. We thank you for it. We thank you, Father, for our elected officials. We thank you for those who govern over us. And we thank you, Father, for the wonderful things that you've given us. And we pray a blessing over this city. We pray that you govern this meeting tonight. Father, that there be harmony and peace and joy, but also be productivity and efficiency in what they do. So, Father, come and manifest your presence here in our midst and bless this time. In Jesus' precious name we pray. Amen.
And Chris Valentine, if you could please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance and the Texas Pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. On the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you, Ms. Valentine. And Ms. Valentine is our city clerk, and we appreciate all you do for us in your daily job. So at this point in the evening, we come to public comment. Citizens may speak on action items listed on the agenda. A request to speak card should be completed and returned to the city clerk prior to the city council reaching this public comment section. Citizens are limited to 3 minutes unless otherwise prescribed by law. Comments related to public hearings listed below will be heard when those specific hearings start. So we'll move, that's item 2. Item 3, we'll move to the consent agenda.
Mayor, I would move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Adams and a second by Councilman Thomas. Any other discussion, questions, comments? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say aye. Or say nay. The motion carries. We'll move to item number 4 under public hearings. Diane York, if you could please come forward and tell us about the conditional use permit for 4000 Texoma Parkway, please, ma'am.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and Council. The first item I have for you tonight is a request for a conditional use permit to allow for the operation of an office warehouse at 4000 Texoma Parkway. The property is zoned commercial, and per section 28.49, which is our use regulation chart, the use of office warehouse does require the approval of a conditional use permit. The operations will consist of the storage of racing simulation parts in addition to other gaming items for online sales. No production will take place on site. The site is currently under construction with a site plan, a formal site plan, having been approved by the planning staff in February of 2024. The site plan included a landscaping plan and depicts adequate parking and driving aisles. Excuse me. Given that the subject property is adjacent to Texoma Parkway or State Highway 91, and as I mentioned, the parking lot is being constructed to provide, there's adequate vehicular circulation, and staff does not anticipate any adverse traffic effects. The applicant is proposing the hours of operation be from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Monday through Friday. The applicant states that the operations will consist of 2 employees and no walk-in customer traffic. Additionally, it is anticipated by the applicant that early operations will consist of weekly deliveries by way of box trucks, but also hand delivery of goods to mailing sites by staff. The future land use plan depicts this area to be developed in a mixed commercial manner. The use of office warehouse is compliant with the designation of mixed commercial, and I should say that staff is not seeking any additional conditions be placed on this permit, given that it's new development, and the hours of operation are consistent with other commercial sites, and it is adjacent to commercial. So with that, staff recommends approval of the request, and the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval of the request at their meeting held on January 14th. And I'm present for any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any questions from council of Ms. York?
This is adjacent to the maintenance yard for the school buses,
It is.
so that's Joel's property next to the warehouse that's got the tattoo parlor and all that stuff in it, John, Mr. Earnhardt. I am curious, is the setback, is that property boundary set back farther than the adjacent properties? It looks like there's a slope to the design.
It's possible. The structure located to the south, I'm not sure what development standards came into play when that was constructed. So the site to the north, as I mentioned, a formal site plan had to be submitted to staff, and so it would have adhered to whatever the development standards are for the commercial zoning district, with that front yard being adjacent to Texoma Parkway.
No further questions?
Any other questions or comments from council? All right, thank you, Mr. York. Is there a motion to approve the ordinance for the, sorry. We, at this point, we will open a public hearing for this CUP. Is there anyone here to speak in favor or against the proposal? Anyone? If not, we'll close the public meeting, and now we will ask for a motion to approve the conditional use permit.
Mayor, I move to approve an ordinance for a conditional use permit to allow for the use of an office warehouse for property located at 4,000 Texoma Parkway.
Second. You may have.
There's a motion from Councilman Massey, second by Councilman Thomas for approval. Any other discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Go to 4B. Ms. York, welcome back.
Thank you, Mayor. The second item I have for you is a request for a conditional use permit in order to operate an automotive repair shop for property located at 917 South Armstrong. The property is zoned commercial, and therefore, per section 28.49, requires an approved conditional use permit prior to operating. The site has been developed. Go back to this, sorry. The site has been developed in a manner that supports an auto repair use or an auto dealership use. And I should say that the site has also had a previously approved conditional use permit for the particular automotive repair use. That conditional use permit was approved by City Council on January 18th of 2022. However, that use has lapsed in addition to development standards from the previous conditional use permit not being met, and therefore the request had to be submitted again. Significant improvements have been made. I'm not sure. I think they're listed in your backup in your agenda, but significant improvements have been made to the existing building since new ownership has taken over. Parking spaces have been striped, and there is a screening fence located on the west side of the property for vehicles awaiting repair, and that was a requirement from the previous conditional use permit. It still remains. It's kind of small. And the property is also screened from the adjacent residential properties on the west side of the property by way of a metal fence. The site is nearly covered, completely covered I'm just going to stay here, sorry. The site is completely covered with impervious surface, which creates a hindrance for landscaping requirements. And the applicant stated within their project narrative that they do not anticipate installing landscaping. However, staff is seeking a condition be placed on the conditional use permit requiring that at least 2 to 4 landscape planters are placed at the entrance of the main structure. This requirement is similar to conditions placed on other automotive sites that we've asked council to consider in the past. And while it doesn't meet the landscaping requirements, it does add to a little bit of beautification for the site. Additionally, staff wishes to place 2 additional conditions on the site. One, you can kind of see from this aerial, there is an existing metal carport that we are seeking be removed. In addition to the third condition, open storage of material or inoperable vehicles or vehicles awaiting repair shall be prohibited. All open storage, including those vehicles awaiting repair or that are inoperable, must be screened from all public rights-of-ways and residentially zoned districts. Failure to comply with these conditions, if approved, will result in the loss of an approved certificate of occupancy. The previous conditional use permit basically had the same requirements, one with that screening fence that I mentioned that's a little small. It was stated within that conditional use permit that inoperable vehicles or vehicles awaiting repair, and we're talking about significant repairs, not just an oil change or tire rotation. That's why you have your parking spaces striped. But ones that are awaiting for that significant repair be screened, they were not. They were just kind of haphazardly on site. And so we're hoping to mitigate or be a little bit more clear in our requirements for this conditional use permit if council deems it necessary. The applicant has also proposed hours of operation within their project narrative to consist of 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., Monday through Friday, with additional hours of 8 a.m. To 3 p.m. on Saturday. During the planning and zoning meeting, the commissioners had a discussion and they did wish to impose in condition that business hours be from 8 to 3 p.m. Monday through Saturday. Please note that this is not listed in my staff report, so if the council deems it necessary, please ensure to include that with your motion. The future land use plan does designate the subject area to be developed in a mixed commercial manner. Automotive repair is consistent with a mixed commercial manner. And staff recommends approval with the following conditions in addition to the recommendation that the Planning and Zoning Commission made. And Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval at their meeting held on January 14th with that additional condition. And I'm present for any questions you may have, and I believe the applicant is here as well.
Can you tell me why, I guess, the recommended hours of operation from 8 to 3 Monday through Saturday, the staff recommended that instead of like a traditional 8 to 5?
I'd like to clarify, it's Monday through Friday is 8 to 5, Saturday only 8 to 3.
Okay.
There you go, thank you.
Right on.
I appreciate that, Mary Tate.
Are there screen wall options that would allow for the storage of vehicles in triage that would create, I'm thinking of B&B Automotive on the west side of 75, maybe not a brickwork in this neighborhood, but you know, something that would allow those, most of the places that I have to take my vehicles, you know, it's going to be several days before they can get to them, and it's an inconvenience to have to store it at my property before I can take it there to get in line for their work on my work.
So the existing fence that is there is wood. It does deter from the ordinance a little bit allowing that wood, but something of that nature, just screening whatever those vehicles are that are not in operation or awaiting a significant repair, would be approved by staff.
So a 100% visual screen.
Correct.
And I'm guessing preferably not a corrugated metal on, you know, horizontal orientation like we see in the metal yards that are just outside of city annex.
That would be, yes, that's correct. And that is something that staff can provide the applicant guidance on. I'd much rather see a fence than see cars.
You said the applicant is here?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
At this time, we'll open the public hearing for item 4B on the agenda. And please give us your name and your
Zafir
address.
Tantula, Mariposa Realty Inc. Zafir Tantula.
Do you intend to erect other structures on it in a future phase of this property ownership?
Just to go back a minute, I acquired this property 5 months ago, so I know there was issues before with previous owner or tenant, and I'm not planning that. So the fence is already there, the wooden fence that would hide those vehicles. There's really no plan to have there anything sitting there for weeks when they're waiting for the repair. So nothing will be open like the hood or bumpers hanging off the cars or something like that. But there's existence 40 by 40, I believe, already there that they made before me.
And staff approves the use of the existing fence as the screen wall?
Yes, if it fits his needs, it may have not fit the other applicant's needs, but if it fits his needs and there is no open storage, then that would be fine for us.
Yeah, there's no plan to have like open storage, so I think that's sufficient as far as putting few cars that is there is not going to be visible, waiting for part or whatever the approval from a customer or some. So I believe it's fairly sufficient.
So part of our mandate is to beautify the access to downtown. There's several $1 million spent every year on beautification by private or public funds. And as we have seen in cities to our south, if you don't have access to the downtown, you start having a dead downtown. And I drive by this building every single day on my way downtown, and I am appreciative of the nature of the business that you're bringing because it will provide a service that I can use for my vehicles. But I certainly don't want to have it detract from the purpose of our council, which is to make our city continue to beautify, especially on the inbound to the heart of our city. So I look forward to your project. Thank you.
Yeah, I understand that, and I have no intention of continuing with the previous guy was there. And I already made some changes. It does look better, and I'm planning to go that way. So I will stand behind it as far as cleanliness and operation being the way you want.
Any other questions for the proposed owner? If not, thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate your comments. Is there anyone else here that would like to speak in favor or against item 4B?
I have a question for Julie. In the third bullet in the motion, it indicates open storage of materials is the prohibition. Is open specifically the ability to view through fencing material? Is that the way that open is defined in this case?
No, I think open would be outside of the screened area where it's visible, like stacking tires in the front, that sort of thing.
So it's outside of the building and outside of the screen wall that's there? Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to speak? If not, we'll close the public meeting. Any other discussion from council? If not, is there a motion?
I move to approve an ordinance for a conditional use permit to allow the use of an automotive repair shop with the following conditions. Landscape planters be placed at the main structure's entrance to satisfy landscape requirements. The carport on the side is to be removed. And open storage of materials, as we understand it, immobile vehicles or vehicles awaiting repair shall be prohibited.
And additionally, if you could, business hours of operation be from 8 to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday and 8 to 3 on Saturday.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion by Councilman Massey and a second by Mayor Pro Tem Adams. Any other discussion, questions? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And Ms. York.
Thank
you
you,
get number
Mayor.
3 tonight.
Thank
So,
you.
Item C, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councilman Massey. The last item I have for you tonight is a request for a conditional use permit for property located at 130 West Woodard Street to allow for the operation of a mobile food unit. 130 West Woodard is zoned central area and falls within the Austin Overlay District as well as the Commercial Historic Overlay District. Per section 28.49, mobile food units located within the central area zoning district require a conditional use permit. 130 West Woodard is home to Driggs Liquor, and there is a large parking lot that you can kind of see from this picture located on the south side of the site. And the applicant is proposing to allow for one mobile food unit within this parking lot. And the type of mobile food unit may change depending on the property owner's approval. However, only one unit is allowed at any given time. Staff has received a preliminary site plan detailing the location of the proposed mobile food unit. However, this plan does not depict designated parking spaces or drive aisles. As a condition for approval, staff is seeking a parking plan that does depict these parking spaces and drive aisles. Given the adjacency to Austin Avenue, it's imperative that the allowance of the mobile food unit does not cause any adverse traffic issues. And providing the parking plan will allow staff to best assist the applicant and ensure the safety of patrons and drivers. Section 28.39.2.b.1, which is the Central Area Zoning District, and it's a section that lists out requirements for mobile food units, requires a parking lot containing a mobile food unit within the central area that must contain a minimum of 15 parking spaces. The site located here does not appear to meet the minimum parking requirement. However, without a parking plan with depicted parking spaces, staff cannot confirm this. However, if the parking lot does fall short of the required parking spaces, there is adequate parking along West Woodard Street, as well as several parking lots to the east. I put 2 in my staff report. There appear to be more. And there is the alley that has been reconstructed during the D3 project located between Austin Avenue and Houston Avenue that connects both the subject property and those parking lots. And this alley provides for safe and adequate pedestrian traffic. So the parking plan, I just want to clarify that while that requirement exists within our ordinance, staff is more concerned about what the mobile or how the mobile food unit could I guess impact that private parking lot. It's not so much that there's not enough parking. It's if somebody pulls in and there's already people parked, what does that do to the traffic trying to enter in and out of that parking lot? It's not so much that we're looking for parking spaces to be mitigated. So I just want to clarify that. Staff is asking that 2 additional conditions be placed for approval in addition to the parking plan. The first condition is that each mobile food unit must adhere to the requirements listed within Chapter 15, Article 3. Article 3 of this chapter details permitting and disposal requirements in addition to other standards for mobile food units. It is imperative that each mobile food unit allowed on this property comply with the standards listed within Chapter 15, Article 3 prior to operation. And the second condition is requesting that each mobile food unit must adhere to all applicable building and fire codes. Electricity must be provided for the potential mobile food units. And there are specific distances that are required per the fire code for these mobile food units between the unit and existing structures. Any preparation required for the future mobile food unit, must be appropriately permitted and inspected by the Building and Inspections Division. And additionally, any fire codes, as I mentioned, must be met in order for each mobile food unit to ultimately obtain the mobile food unit permit. With that, staff recommends approval with the conditions that I have mentioned, and the Planning and Zoning Commission also recommended approval at their meeting held on January 14th. I'm present for any questions you may have, and I believe the applicant is here as well.
Any questions of Ms. York?
So the alley would not be used for parking? It
No,
would
ma'am.
just be used for foot traffic?
Yes, ma'am. For pedestrian traffic or, I guess, typical traffic, but yes.
Do they get to count the common spaces that are on the north end of the building on Woodard?
Woodard, So the Central Area Zoning District does not have any parking requirements, given that it's a downtown area, as well as the adequate number of parking lots that are available and on-street parking. The anomaly is that that requirement for mobile food units. But there is adequate parking on Woodard Street, as well as the many parking lots that are around there. The reason I mentioned the ones to the east is that it does provide that safe pedestrian traffic way through the alley.
I mean, we have standards for parking for properties for specific uses all over the city, yes? So commercial, retail, restaurant all have a per thousand requirement?
Square footage per, yes.
And then that is waived in the central district because it is impossible in historic properties. So, why are we standing on that principle here in this case? Is it because he does have a parking lot, so now he's obligated to meet a certain standard there? Or is it to keep parking from gobbling up what is retail space adjacent to it the way that, say, my restaurant happened to do for blocks and blocks?
I think the intent behind the requirement for those 15 parking spaces is to not take away from any available parking for our downtown patrons. I guess I would say if this mobile food unit was located in one of those eastern parking lots that are advertised as public parking, it may become a nuisance or an issue for those that are visiting downtown. This is a private parking lot, and it doesn't really take away from that public parking aspect, and so therefore staff didn't feel it was necessary to impose that minimum 15 parking spaces.
I take pretty good umbrage with that because our downtown has a common parking system, and our business owners all harness the value of that. And our specific objective as business incentivizers is to create foot traffic that have transactional relationships with the businesses who invest in our city. And food happens to be a tether between a retail transaction and a second retail transaction. So the farther we can spread our food consumption footprint block by block from east to west first is the way that towns like ours come back to life, and then north to south as we have achieved sort of a max density on the east to west footprint per block. We are tethering, those same people who are going to complain about lost parking spaces are the ones who count on the restaurants to hold the transactional interest of our consumers that we spend so much to acquire in the first place. So I think it's unfair to say because they have a private parking lot that they should be held to some standard. I think that's unreasonable and ultimately could, if we continue that path, cost other people who would be bringing good businesses here. Generally speaking, in the alcohol sales business, noon is not a strong driver for your sales. So that's a perfect use of a fixed cost asset that they can use at hours to generate additional revenue. I think it's a brilliant plan. And it stretches our block by block need to create a restaurant footprint to tether the interest of our consumers where we don't really have anything of quality so far. And if the reconstruction of that building is any indication of the quality that they intend to bring to the others, and knowing the developer, I suspect there are other reputational restaurants and such that they built in town do that. But we should not hinder development in that way.
Can I ask for some clarification? Are you concerned with that language that's listed within the central area requiring the 15 minimum? Okay. I just wanted to make sure, and that's something that staff can look at. We're not asking to impose that ordinance onto them. The reason for the parking plan, because there is adequate parking near the area as well as on the adjacent streets. We're just wanting the parking plan just to ensure that there is adequate parking for anybody that wants to park there, and that there's drive aisles for those that do park there and they can get in and out. Not to determine how many parking spaces there are, because as I mentioned, I don't think there's 15 there. We're not seeking 15 parking spaces. We just want to ensure that those that do park there can get out safely.
I agree with the last sentence.
Okay.
Everything before that, I think, is unfair to the rest of the building owners in town. I have owned several downtown that had no square footage owned outside of the brick. I didn't own a single parking space. And if that same restriction had been imposed on me, it would have stopped the development that I'd like to think helped spur where we are today. So I think we need to revisit that moving forward, that it is onerous in the central area to require a business owner to provide parking that would be in any way leaning towards what is a reasonable assumption in any other commercial property around town.
Okay. Specifically to the central area.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I mean, that's the whole nature of our common parking system. perhaps an incentive for us as counselors to acquire other real estate that would allow us to create parking downtown that would, mirror some of the investments some of our sister cities have made around North Texas.
Sure, okay. Thank you for the clarification.
Are there any plans to have outdoor seating?
Not that I'm aware of. That may be a good question for the applicant. They have not provided any within this application itself.
And there are multiple entrances, so there's an entrance and an exit?
Yes, I believe so. I know I think it's all one open driveway there, but entered from the alley or from Austin Avenue.
Yeah, there's only the fencing on that east side that is basically a drive protection so that you don't run into the eastern side building neighbor. Correct? There's no additional pole fencing on the south or west
No.
side of that?
No, sir. That's correct.
All right.
Is
Any other-
applicant here? Can we?
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
Yes, ma'am. I believe. I thought I saw
All
him.
right,
He's back there.
thank you. We'll open the public hearing at this time and invite anyone who wants to come forward, speaking for or against. Please give us your name and your address, please, sir.
Jonathan Earnhardt, 110 South Houston Avenue. We do have plans for outdoor seating. We've actually put in for the Historic District for approval, but we had the fence drawn. They drew it up, and we wanted it sideways because we're making it actual out of iron that's tougher. So if someone's tire flew off or something, maybe it would stop them, not just cheap panels that are set up there. So we resubmitted that, but I think it may have got lost in transaction because we haven't been back for a hearing yet. So I'll double check on that. And I want to note the location on the food truck was pointed out by the fire marshal in our meeting that it couldn't be next to the building. So our plan is to put it closer to Austin, more about 12 foot from our property line. There's a pole right there, and to try to obtain power off that pole. So there's a wire running to the food truck and not from the building or across the parking lot that we have to deal with all the time. We're not looking for a permanent food truck. We're looking for some like event thing, almost like it's Food Truck Friday or something, and bring in food trucks that are not from around here, like the Lobster Brothers, the Corn Dog One, the ones that you see at big events around here to try to, our purpose is really just to drag traffic and notoriety to the rigs and get more traffic going there, not necessarily to make any extra income we might be paying these to come, just really so people learn to come every Friday after they get their check to the liquor store, Then we will draw the line in. It's pretty much our whole parking lot is a drive-in, drive-off. There was no one entry. It was a smooth entry across and all the way across the alley. So we can draw our parking spots against the building and then do an in and out towards Austin and one into the alley. So people, if there is traffic trying to pull in one side, they could pull in the alley or they could pull in directly to our parking lot. Is that alley one way? Does anybody know right there? Or which way it goes? Don't think it's one way. So then they could pull in there or if it became a problem, maybe we would direct traffic around, but I don't think it would be that busy. We don't have that much business at the liquor store, so it'd just be the food truck and mostly probably people coming from the downtown area, but don't have any
If
questions.
anybody's built a commissary kitchen in Grayson County yet? So do you have to prepare and clean off-site?
So they would, the ordinance that she says they have to do, they have that, they would follow that ordinance as any food truck does. So it'd be on that food truck that follows that. And I'm not sure about their rules or whatnot.
So when we looked at it, if you don't have a commissary kitchen in the county, then you can clean and prep basically at home or on-site. So I was curious if that would lead to the necessity to build something within your building that would fit that use. Like, do you need underground sewer and that kind of thing to be able to have this be future-proof?
Yeah, I think we're targeting food trucks that are used to having their own commissary probably because like those that do travel, they come to that tea place in Sherman, they go to that Fink Festival, things like that. So I'm pretty sure they're prepared to do theirs on their own and they're coming from south, so they probably have a setup there.
Any other questions?
No, sir.
I drove by today, I was a little concerned it might not be wide enough, but it Just driving by, it looks like it's plenty wide to do this.
Yeah, it seems narrow looking here, but it is pretty wide of a parking lot back there. I think one of the measurements was on there. I can't remember if it's 150 or 120. And then that building is probably more like the 60 range, so it gives about 60 feet. So if, keeping your food truck between less than 30 feet should give you room to get in and out.
Mayor, if I may, this doesn't directly affect the SUP, but you might just want to be sure the license that you have for the liquor store, whether or not the food trucks can sell beer and alcohol out of the food truck on the premises of the license that you have, just so you know what to tell them they can or can't sell, so that the license for the business that's there doesn't somehow get affected.
Yeah, I think the design of the patio, we're going to own it as Earnhardt built and do it as it's not going to be just for the food truck. It's really going to be a daily use for anybody to use, so they can bring their dog. We have a design with a dog fountain and a water fountain, so anybody in the public can just use it at any time, and it was just going to be something provided free by us as Earnhardt built, not really the liquor store, because I think we were concerned of it being more like it was provided by Driggs, and people didn't want to go in there unless they bought something. We want it where if people just want to sit on us and grab their lunch at the sandwich shop and watch traffic and see. So we may do it as two different leases, and yeah, we'll have to follow what license, but our goal would probably not for them to sell liquor, rather that Driggs sold them some for the later of the day or something.
Any other questions for the owner? All right.
Thank you.
Mr. Earnhardt. Appreciate it. Is there anyone else that would like to speak either in favor or against this project? If not, the public hearing is closed. Any other questions or comments from council? If not, is there a motion?
Mayor, I move to approve an ordinance for a conditional use permit to allow for the use of a mobile food unit for property located at 130 West Woodard Street, following conditions to be applied. Parking plan provided to staff illustrating spaces and driving aisles for the parking lot where the mobile food unit will be situated. Each mobile food unit will adhere to the requirements listed within Chapter 15, Article 3, and each mobile food unit will adhere to all building and fire codes.
Second.
All right, there's a motion by Councilman Massey and a second by Councilman Thomas to approve item 4C on our agenda. Any other discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And thank you very much, Ms. York and Mr. Earnhardt. Items for individual consideration, we're at 5A, Urban Pereira. Could you please come forward and talk to us about generators and electrical improvements?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The item I have for your consideration tonight is the award of a bid to GDC Industrial for the permanent installation of 2 electrical backup generators at 2 of our most critical sites. The first site is the building we're in tonight, City Hall. This is a 250 kilowatt diesel-driven generator that staff purchased with ARP funds and has been storing at our maintenance center, awaiting award of a contract to get it permanently installed here at City Hall. The reason we consider City Hall a critical site is because it houses our emergency operations center and some critical staff. So it's essential that we keep this building powered up during an extended power outage. The scope of this contract includes a sound wall or a barrier to obscure the view of the generator. I have a rendering here that illustrates it's a masonry wall, fairly tall. The generator in the last photo, the engine mounts to the diesel tank. So that's the black part of the base of the enclosure there is actually the diesel fuel tank. And then the top is the actual engine. The sound wall was placed in the southeast corner of the parking lot due to the fact that it is a diesel engine, so it does have some noise. The enclosure is sound attenuated, so the noise should be fairly minimal, but it also will have a little bit of diesel exhaust. The scope of this project is basically to install the sound wall, the enclosure, mount the generator, we're going to be installing a new on-court utility transformer in this location. We'll also have the automatic transfer switch that staff bought with the generator, so it's also being stored at the maintenance center right now, awaiting installation. The contractor will be installing conduit duct banks and conductors from this location to the building to power it up. Once it's all complete here, everything will happen automatically. The power goes out, the generator gets called, power is switched over to the generator source, and then it returns when utility power is back in a good value. The second site is our Lake Randell raw water pump station. This pump station is critical because it delivers raw water from Lake Randell to the Dean Ryland Water Treatment Facility for treatment and distribution to town. Right now, we actually have the generator temporarily installed. You can kind of see that it's on a gravel base there. It's a 500 kilowatt generator, outputs 480 volts. The reason it's temporarily installed is because the switchgear actually limits the capacity of the generator. And so in order to actually realize the full potential of the generator, we need to upgrade the switchgear. Right now, as it sits, it can only run one of our 4 pumps. Once it's permanently installed through this contract, we'll be able to run up to 4 pumps. The duct bank and the conductors that the contractor will run will allow us to eventually, if we ever need to, add 2 additional pumps to realize the full build out of the pump station, at which point we could upgrade the generator and potentially run all 6. The substantial completion of the City Hall is 180 days from award of the contract. The substantial completion for the Randell Pump Station is 360 days. The reason such the difference is that some of the components, the electrical components that we need to get for the switchgear at the Randell Pump Station have some long lead times. So we're going to try to cut that down. With that, if council has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
All right, thank you. Any questions?
The placement of the screen wall, I'm guessing, was the result of lots of thought. Did that cost any more parking spaces out of an already tight downtown than if we placed it in the northeast corner of that same parking lot where the corner would still lose? The reason for my question is the cable that's going to be required to take that to the building to provide power is expensive by the foot.
It is.
So adding an extra, looks like perhaps almost 100 feet is a not insubstantial cost.
No, sir, it isn't. The reason we ultimately selected this was if we were to walk out right there right now, there's this part of that corner that's kind of hashed out that we can't really use as parking because we have an angled parking area. That was one reason. So we had a little bit of real estate there that we could use. We'll probably lose about 2 to 3 parking spots right there, unfortunately. The other reason is we didn't want to put this too close to the lofts adjacent to City Hall down this way. You know, if the power were to go out in the middle of the night, this thing is going to come on, it's going to start running, it's going to start powering our building. So we didn't want to have any nuisances, you know, with residences up top there. So that's kind of what we were going for as far as.
I would have assumed that having it closer to the building wall where the sound would have to turn a corner, it would be slightly quieter than having it across an open field between you and the window that it's going to be ricocheting against. But somebody smarter than me has thought through that, I'm sure. My second question is, it appears in the rendering that there is no access to the inside of the moat that has been created around this, unless those are wall doors, like fold-out doors on that northwest corner.
Yes, sir, that's exactly what they are. Mm-hmm. You won't be able to see through them, but they're basically a gate that we can lock up to keep anybody out of that area.
I would like to at least suggest, having installed several of these in the past, that we put some sort of rail system, something like a light-duty rail like you would have at a switchyard, so that you can move the generator out of that enclave. Otherwise, anytime you have to remove it to maintain it, that cannot be done on site. You've got to have a crane. And the crane that's going to have to lift that thing is going to take up all the street or all that parking and possibly do damage to the things that we're spending so much money to do. So what we have done in the past or seen done as best practices is to have some way to wheel it out of its particular location and move it out to where it can be moved slightly easier with, say, a wrecker.
Okay. That's an interesting thought. We can definitely run that by Plummer Associates and see if that's something we can do within the budgeted amount that we have here.
My other concern about having it at that southeast corner is that you are making a turn from one thoroughfare where we have a high density of movement onto another. Those are chances for somebody to not be able to see down the drive lane that they're getting ready to turn onto. So I'm curious if we can't, if there's not an alternative way to make it easier to make sure we don't have accidents that happen at that corner, both for pedestrians or for vehicles.
Yes, sir, we looked at, and it's kind of misleading here in the rendering drawing, but we looked at where the stop bar was, so if a vehicle is coming south on Rusk and wants to turn right or left onto Chestnut there, we made sure that where that wall would be, there'd be enough room for them to approach the stop bar, not exceed it, but still be able to see right or left before turning, and also be able to see the pedestrian crossings.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I think I got enough for everybody.
Okay. You're on the roll. All right, Mr. Ferrer, thank you very much. Is there any further discussion from council? If not, is there a motion?
Mayor, I move to award the bid and approve entering into a contract with GDC Industrial, contract number 2025-001, in the amount of $2,229,076.47 for project number 24113, generators and electrical improvements, and authorize the interim city manager to execute the same, subject to final legal review and approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Adams, a second by Councilman Thomas, to approve item 5A. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, and now we'll go to project updates. Mr. Perro, welcome back.
Thank you, Mayor. We're excited to bring this project update to you. This is a long time coming for us. It's a street pavement management project that kicked off in March of 2024. It was done by Infrastructure Management Services, and they're actually in attendance today to do a presentation to council of the slides. I'll give you a little bit of a data download on what they gathered, but they basically drove every city street with a very high technology truck that detects pretty much any pavement imperfection, and collected that data and then spent a few months analyzing it and created some reports that we think council will be excited about. One of them is actually just, council will actually know what the condition of every street in the city is. They're actually going to present a pavement management plan for us to keep up with the current rating of our streets and improve them. And they also have some financing guidelines that they want to present. So with that, I'd like to bring up Megan Ratliff with IMS and have her do that heavy lift for us.
All right.
Thank you.
Welcome to beautiful downtown Denison.
Good evening. That was a great introduction. So I'm Megan Ratliff. I'm a pavement engineer at ICC IMS, Infrastructure Management Services. And I'm here to present on our pavement management project that we completed with the City of Denison. So first, I'm going to get through this pretty quickly, but to quickly go over the agenda, I'll go over our pavement management process, what we do in terms of a survey, some representative conditions, an overview of those conditions, and then finally present on the analysis and the results. So getting into the pavement management process, you guys are all very familiar with this, but you have certain objectives, policies, things that you'd like to see pushed into effect, and then we are consulted to do the actual survey, and then we present analysis results that influence what is implemented in the city, and then it repeats every so often. So a typical cycle is about 5 years, but that is what is done for this one. So the pavement management process operates based on the cost of deferral idea. So basically, we have pavement conditions that are, a quantified number on a scale of 0 to 100. So that is what we're talking about. You can see that scale on the left from very poor to excellent. And essentially, we want to address these pavements before they get into a very bad state. So essentially, it costs less to keep pavements in a good condition for as long as possible than it is to try to fix them when they're already in complete disrepair. So I mentioned this score of 0 to 100. This is what's called the Pavement Condition Index, and it is based on the ASTM standard D6433. This is a very standardized process for calculating and quantifying this number for each roadway in your network. And this number is based on a number of different distresses that we find on the surface. You can see here some examples. Basically, just any type of cracking or potholes, anything that can be found on the surface that is deemed a distress or something that really should not be there, essentially. And one of those is actually a patching. So it kind of is not intuitive, but if you cut into the pavement and you induce a sort of crack or a pothole or any sort of distress that is not meant to be there, that goes against the score. So even a patch or a utility cut counts against the score, just so everyone is aware. And then, when we survey with our van, this is some example of the imagery we get. So we actually quantify each individual crack, and it goes into this calculation of the score. And this score, the Pavement Condition Index, as I mentioned, it goes from 0 to 100, with 100 being excellent. And then we also like to mention, this backlog is a number that quantifies the percentage of the network that is a PCI of 40 and below. So just to kind of give you some context there. And now we'll get into some representative conditions for Denison's network. So it's very clear this road is not very good. It has lots of cracking. It has a patch there. This is poor. It falls into the range of 0 to 25. And then this one is a little bit better, less cracking, but it is still considered poor. It's 25 to 40. And then we get a little bit better, less cracking, but still some visible cracking transversely, a score of 40 to 50 being marginal. And then again, slight improvement, 50 to 60, less cracking, but still present. Next we have good, 60 to 70, some cracking, less bad than the one previously. Very good, obviously much less cracking. It's in better condition overall visibly. So we give this one a score from 70 to 85. And then excellent, being very few distresses, hardly any, were found on the surface. So PCI of 85 to 100. And to kind of summarize this for you, in Denison, we found the average to be a 54. So on a scale of 0 to 100, you can kind of see where that lays. And just to put this in further perspective, we deal with agencies all over the country. We typically see, for a network this size, about a 65. So this is a little bit below, but it is not so far below that it is not manageable, just to put that into context. The backlog percentage is about 32%. Ideally, we would like that number to be lower, and typically we see about 15% on average. So yes, that is a little bit higher than typical, but that's why we do this assessment, to try to get an idea of where we're at and see how we can improve in the future. And sometimes it's helpful to break it down by pavement type. You can see the concrete pavements are in really good condition, an average of 82, but the asphalt network is much lower at about 49. So it's just something to keep in mind. The asphalt could use some love in the near future. And next I'm going to be talking about how this data that we collected and summarized for you all can be used in the future. So we ran an analysis over the course of 5 years into the future, and we are projecting basically how much it's going to cost to achieve certain goals. So if you continue at your current budget over the next 5 years, we're seeing the PCI decrease slightly to about a 49, maybe a 48. So you're seeing a slight decrease over 5 years. But if you increase the budget to maybe, let's say, $2 million per year, that would keep the PCI constant over 5 years. So there's certain things we looked at to be able to project this forward 5 years, and this gives a good indication of maybe what budget should be spent over yearly over the next 5 years. So with that, I'll open it up for questions or comments.
Does your recommendation come with recommendations on where to find the extra $3.5 million?
I wish. I would.
Our citizens would be thrilled.
I would think we would charge a lot more if we could do that.
So can you explain the backlog? Is that roads that were already in?
Yeah, so backlog is it's actually something that we came up with, so that is not a standard way of describing the network, but it's something we felt was helpful to help quantify the amount of pavements that are poor or very poor. And we do this because those are typically the very expensive pavements to fix, the ones that need just to be completely ripped up and redone, essentially. So it's helpful to know what that percentage is. So yeah.
You mentioned that the concrete roads are in better condition. They are also, generally speaking, newer. Is there a best practices that suggests concrete in our temperature and rainfall area and consumer demand for road travel is a better choice as we move forward?
So it's hard to say which one is a better choice. It really depends on the types of materials you have available here, what's cheaper to construct. But it is true concrete lasts longer than asphalt. It's typically constructed thicker, and it does hold up better in maybe fluctuating temperatures. But and it's very common in this area. All of Texas is very heavy concrete use. So, but it really depends on what type of aggregate you get in this area, what type of materials you have available at your disposal.
Thank you.
Mayor and council, one thing to keep in mind on the asphalt streets, because in the past we put our water lines and sewer lines in the middle of the street instead of on the right of way like we do now. A lot of the asphalt streets that you see, the condition of that, in order to maintain that street at a higher level and redo it, an overlay doesn't solve the problem if we don't dig down and replace the water and sewer lines. So when we have 105-year-old water lines like we have underneath the street, we can go out and overlay an asphalt street and make it look beautiful until that first leak. And then all of a sudden we've got holes all over it where we had to dig it up to replace the water and sewer lines. So the street condition is great, and it gives us a starting point, and we can at least prioritize which streets don't have that issue, and that we can move into a 5-year plan, if you will, or a 10-year plan to remove and replace. As far as the asphalt versus the concrete, the biggest challenge that we have there is our soils and the kind of soils that we have and the condition of them. And that's why everybody around us and south of us and north of us mostly build concrete streets, because of the life cycle you get out of that versus an asphalt street. One thing that this will help us with, there's some simple things that we can do to go in and do some crack sealing on a lot of these streets. That will help bring those scores up as we go forward. But quite honestly, as we got the results of this, we weren't as low overall as I thought we would be. I expected it to be a little lower. But we do have the challenge before we start throwing a lot of money at asphalt streets of replacing utilities in order to make that long-lasting. I think the biggest thing is from this, we can develop a 5- and 10-year plan and determine what kind of funds we're going to need out in the future as we look at a bond election or something to really make it a serious impact.
Can you scroll back to the screen where it has the projected budget to maintain or improve? If you've done the forward look, what are you seeing as inflationary adjustments to this year over year as an average? I understand that we have been in an aberrant inflationary market in the last several.
Yeah, that's a great question. And just to give some context to the numbers you see here, an inflation percentage of 3% was utilized for this. Back during COVID, it was much higher. We were seeing anywhere from 7 to 10% per year for the unit rate costs of the different rehabilitation types we were recommending. But now it's kind of settled at 3 is more realistic, 3% that is.
So, Bobby, it looks like that means you're going to be looking for $1 million extra from us next year. Okay. Or if her suggestion pans out to maintain the current level is 2.0 to 2.3, and then you're going to need an additional million to make improvements. So if that improvement is made, then the score you get is relative to the efficiency of the deployment of that capital, whether or not we get farther with those dollars than we would have otherwise projected. So you made him a hard goal line here.
Yes, unfortunately, delivering that news is very common in my line of work.
The other thing that helps us with that is, and this score would be worse had we not done this, like the Loy Lake project that we did, where we replaced many feet and miles of street and water line, sewer line. That brought our score up significantly. Of course, we didn't do this survey before that. We did it after that. But where we go in and have big projects on our CIP that we're going to be replacing streets, RA Street, that helps bring that score up also. So it's a combination of not only maintenance, but as we're building and rebuilding for the future.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Okay, thank you for your presentation. It's very interesting. We knew a lot of this, but some we did not know. So we thank you and your company for helping us get through this survey. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Yes, ma'am. Next, we are looking for an update from Mr. Robert Lay on the big event. Mr. Lay.
Mayor and Council, good to be with you this evening. I get to share info with you regarding the big event, which has become one of my favorite days of the year really quickly. So big event again is our service project day that the city kind of facilitates. We gather volunteers, we take applications from people in need of help around their homes. In 2024, our first event, as a reminder, we ended up having a little over 300 volunteers, helped at 50 different locations. Our volunteers came from multiple places: churches, civic groups. We had a bunch of student athletes, businesses. We had a bunch of city employees come out, and members of the council came out and helped out. Completing projects, lawn care, painting, fixing fences, trimming, anything that you can imagine on the outdoor of a home that we would consider. We kicked off our applications for 2025's big event on January the 2nd. To date, we have already received 45 applications for assistance. Just for a little bit of perspective, at this time last year, we had only gotten 5. So word's gotten out that there's some things out there, but really what that tells me is there's a lot of people that need help. I'll tell you, of all the projects we did last year, we didn't have anybody that was taking advantage of the situation. These are legitimate people that, for whatever reason, different circumstances, they needed the help. And, just super happy that the city was there with volunteers who really, this thing is driven by volunteers. But we're there to step in the gap to help folks. The volunteer applications are going too. We've gotten 4 of those so far. So, hey, we're on the right track. We got to get there. So we will take these first 50 applications for assistance. Once we hit that 50 mark, then it'll just be telling folks, hey, you'll kind of get put on a waiting list. We'll see how many volunteers we get, and then pick up from there. My goal has been to grow this thing. I've been pushing for volunteers in as many different places, and I know people assisting in that. They will come. I know they'll come. That's generally the last part of this, and I'll just sweat it out till then. But what I've told people is we're going to help 50. If I have to go out and do it myself with a couple of people, we're gonna do that for sure. So we're actively seeking sponsors, partners. All that money goes right back into the projects, whether we're buying supplies to complete a project, food to feed our volunteers, or any other expenses that come into the event. I appreciate the council's support in the event. I hope you'll consider coming out that day. We had a great time last year, anticipated again. I was supposed to ask Councilman Thorne to pray for the weather again. He did a good job last year, so if somebody wants to take up that mantle, that'd be great. Can I answer any questions?
It was a great event last year. It started off a little cool, as I recall, but by the afternoon, we were peeling layers off and having a great day. Yeah.
The good news is, Robert, you won't lose any hair over your ball and getting your ball.
Oh, no.
Wow.
I won't.
You know, the man who cuts his own firewood will get warm twice, Robert. So I suspect if we have hardworking folks out there, the temperature will not matter.
Yeah. Very good, very good. Any other questions or comments? Maybe just questions instead of comments. Anyway, well, we thank you so much, and I'm excited about it. I think it's a great thing for our community. Those of us that were volunteers last year really realize how many people are unable to help themselves. And it was quite heartwarming to have a great day and just to see the pride and the joy of the homeowners is just spectacular. So anyway, thank you for getting this organized again for 2025, and we'll look forward to March 2.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. At this time, it's 7:06, I believe, and yes, it is 7:06. I can see it now. We're going to break for a fairly short executive session, and we'll be back. And for those of you that need to leave, we thank you for attending our meeting tonight, and look forward to seeing you again here soon. And at this time, we'll take just a few moments for an executive session at 7:06. Thank you. Okay, the time is now 7:16, between 7:16 and 7:17. We'll come back to order in the city council meeting. The executive committee executive session was to consult with the attorney on a matter of which the attorney's duties due to governmental body under the Texas disciplinary rules of professional conduct conflicts with this chapter, and or consult with an attorney about pending or contemplated litigation or contemplated settlement of the same, section 551.071. And we did confer with the city attorney regarding legal requirements of the CDBG 5-year action plan and HUD required survey. There's no action taken. So at this time, if there is no further business, I'm going to call it 7:18. Since that one says 7:17, I'll watch this 7:18. We will adjourn our meeting, and thanks everyone for coming.